Disney Television Animation's newest eye candy hit is here, and we gotta talk about how incredible this show is. Girl and Devil Dinosaur adapts the breakout Marvel 2015 comic duo in dazzling style, roller disco included. Set on the Lower East Side of New York City, girl genius Lunella Lafayette teams up with a time-displaced dinosaur to save her city as Moongirl. It goes without saying that I'm drooling over the artistry that's going into this project, but I'm also really enjoying the little comic book deep cuts and Easter eggs that are being included. That said, it looks like this adaptation is taking some big creative liberties with adapting the Moongirl comics, and not everything is exactly like it is in the books. So today, I'm taking you through those details to talk about why they're actually incredibly cool, smart changes to the story. You're watching WhitneyVision, and this is my breakdown of Moongirl and Devil Dinosaur's first 6 episodes. This is your spoiler warning! There are currently 11 episodes of Moongirl and Devil Dinosaur available on Disney+, but today I'll only be touching the first batch of 6. If you haven't caught up yet, hit pause on this video and come back with your interdimensional sidekick. Now let's dive into the pilot, Moongirl Landing. As I just mentioned, this adaptation makes several alterations to the source material, and you can actually see a lot of those changes in the bones of the show. For starters, comic book Lunella is 9 years old, while animated Moongirl is 13. In the comics, her parents also don't own a roller rink. Her father James works in a disease unit at a hospital, and her mother Adria is a counselor at a prison. Not only do her grandparents not live with her in the comics, but they scarcely appear at all. One of the few times one of them does appear is in issue 44, where Lunella travels to the past to give her grandmother a pep talk. In this issue, we also learn that Mimi's maiden name is Josephine Jojo Jacobs, and that Lunella inherited her exceptional smarts from this branch of her family tree. In the cartoon series, it appears that Lunella also inherits her mechanical know-how from her pops, who's described in press releases as a tinkerer and meticulous craftsman. The addition of the Lafayettes owning the Roll With It roller rink is perhaps the smartest small change in Moongirl's background. From a story perspective, particularly with this pilot episode, it gives Moongirl tangible stakes to fight for. In the comics, instead of fighting for the people of the Lower East Side, Moongirl's first arc is tied up with a super science MacGuffin that plays into Marvel's convoluted Inhumans lore. We'll circle back to that plot not in a bit, but by adding Roll With It to the show, Moongirl is more actively tied to the community she's protecting. Her actions can directly save her family and her neighbors' financial livelihood. Roll With It is also a smart way to seamlessly explain MG's remarkable skate moves. Lunella was raised on a rink. Obviously, she can skate circles around any supervillain that gets in her way. Going even further, roller skating has significant historical importance to Black Americans. Roller rinks were some of the first places where the fights for desegregation took place, and as a result, many Black communities have deep ties to roller rinks that foster Black-friendly or Black-centric spaces. If you have HBO Max, I recommend checking out the documentary United Skates, which goes into depth about the intersection of roller skating and Black culture and how many roller rinks are faced with economic closure, much like Roll With It and Moongirl Landing. If you didn't realize, this whole first episode is a metaphor for gentrification. Moongirl has to step up as a hero for the Lower East Side because the Avengers and government organizations don't view the struggles of its citizens as a priority. Additionally, the villain is a white woman who specifically exploits the community's resources for this reason, and as a result of her actions, people are being pushed out of their homes and their small family businesses are dying left and right. One of the biggest changes the series makes is to Moongirl and Devil Dino themselves, drastically streamlining their origins and powers. In the comics, Lunella is a girl genius who discovers that she's inhuman, an offshoot of the human race with ancestors that were genetically modified long ago by blue warmongering aliens called the Kree. When exposed to a substance known as Terrigen Mist, people with the inhuman gene undergo a metamorphosis that cocoons them, giving them superpowers when they emerge. Inhumans are basically X-Men mutants with extra steps, but they became a common origin for Marvel characters created during the 2010s because Marvel Comics sold off the movie rights to the X-Men to Fox, and they wanted to prioritize comic book stories for characters they could put into movies that they owned. Moongirl was created in 2015, so she was part of this Inhuman comic book renaissance. While you might think that her Inhuman powers are related to her brain power, you'd be wrong. Lunella is naturally a human super genius before she undergoes Terrigenesis. So all those slapped together Inspector Gadget gizmos are 100% her own Stark-level ingenuity. In fact, we've yet to see her Inhuman powers in the TV show, and honestly, they're kinda silly. Lunella gets her powers in issue 7, when she hatches from her chrysalis and discovers that she can switch bodies with Devil Dinosaur. She can't really control the switch, as it's triggered by strong emotions, and we later learn that it's tied to the full moon. Considering how the MCU is altering characters like Kamala Khan from being a comic book Inhuman to a live-action mutant, I'm curious if we'll end up seeing Lunella also get this retconning treatment. On one hand, it does eliminate confusing alien politics, but on the other, Terrigenesis is a great stand-in for puberty, and the writers could have a wild time with Lou and Dee swapping minds. It does look like the upcoming episode, Goodnight Moongirl, explores this angle to Lunella and Devil's relationship in a one-off capacity, so the possibilities of this being a recurring element to the show are there. Cartoon Devil Dinosaur is also drastically altered for the series. He's actually a legacy character that was created in 1978 by the legendary Jack Kirby. While Devil Dinosaur looks like he's just from the past, he's actually also from an alternate reality known as Earth 78411, aka Dinosaur World, where dinosaurs and early hominids existed during the same time period. In his original runs, he was partnered with a character known as Moonboy. Moonboy was, in essence, a caveman and an early ancestor to humans, likely a member of the species Homo habilis. He was part of a peaceful tribe known as the Small Folk that were at odds with a murderous tribe known as the Killer Folk. In this world, Devil Dinosaur's species was referred to as devil beasts. That's how he got his name, but they were more or less Tyrannosaurus rexes down to their green-hued depiction. So why is Devil red? Well, in their first run, the Killer Folk are hunting Devil Dinosaur and his family of devil beasts using fire. Instead of killing Devil, the fire activates a mutant gene within him, turning his scales red. While recovering from the attack, Moonboy came to Devil's aid, and the pair bonded together to stop the Killer Folk from causing more harm. Together, the pair went on all sorts of comic book adventures, and even visited the primary Marvel 616 universe. Fast forward to 2015. During the events of Moongirl and Devil Dinosaur issue 1, Moonboy dies protecting a Kree artifact from the Killer Folk. This artifact opened a portal to Moongirl, who's found the same artifact in her reality. Moonboy's dying wish was for Devil Dinosaur to avenge him and stop the Killer Folk, so when he finds Lunella also fighting to keep this artifact away from them, she becomes his new bonded partner. Honestly, I think it's a very good thing that the Moongirl Devil Dino series cuts out this history and avoids this storyline. For starters, having Moongirl inherit her dino partner and moniker from a monkey man is in itself kind of racially problematic, but I also think removing Moonboy from the equation helps give Lunella more agency over her identity. To be fair, in the comics, Lunella doesn't take up the name Moongirl because Devil used to be partnered with Moonboy. It's actually her reclaiming a nickname her classmates teased her with. The fact that it's a gender inversion of Moonboy is canonically purely coincidental. In the series, we instead see Lunella choose the name Moongirl in honor of her hero, the mysterious scientist who built the blueprints to the portal that brought Devil to the LES. This scientist and her possible time machine / possible multiversal portal tech gives the series an additional long-term mystery to explore. Who is this engineer and why did she build this machine? Why did she disappear? Like Moonboy of comic lore, is her backstory somehow tied to Devil? These are the sort of threads I love to pull and theorize about, so I'm excited that the writers are giving me some scraps for my conspiracy board. Side quest, but who else thinks this might be Lunella herself? I know I keep pitching this story trope, so I apologize to my regular viewers, but come on! We've got a brilliant scientist with a time-traveling box that goes by the codename Moongirl. Future Lunella is certainly a possible suspect. In the comics, Lunella does unlock the ability to time travel while reverse engineering the Kree tech that brought Devil to her, and there's also a whole unfinished plotline about her dreaming of a future version of herself. As far as I'm aware, this was never fully explored, so my comic book theory for this is that Lunella is accidentally dreamwalking Multiverse of Madness style into an older variant of herself thanks to her yet-to-be fully mastered body-swapping powers. Right now, she's young and can only swap with Devil, but who knows what she'll be able to do in a few years' time. But that's potentially a theory for another time. My point for now is that time travel and an older mysterious Lunella both have comic precedent. Circling back to the villain of the episode, Aftershock is a very interesting deep pull from the comic series. Voiced by Alison Brie, Aftershock, aka Ms. Dillon, is likely the daughter of the Spider-Man villain Maxwell Dillon, aka Electro. In Marvel publication history, we've met two Aftershocks, and both of them are women following in Electro's footsteps. Moongirl and Devil Dinosaur's Aftershock seems to be primarily modeled after Earth 982's Aftershock because her name is Alison Dillon. She also goes by Samantha Dillon, which might be why she's just Ms. Dillon in Moongirl. Earth 982, also known as MC2, is the reality where Peter Parker's daughter Mayday becomes Spider-Girl. This version of Aftershock debuted in 2002 as a troubled teen who inherited her father's electrical powers. With her father in prison and her mother dead, Allison bounced from foster home to foster home before becoming Aftershock. The other Marvel Aftershock is a woman named Danielle Blunt from Earth 616. Debuting in 2010's Young Allies Volume 2 Issue 1, this Aftershock is a member of the Bastards of Evil, a group made up of second-generation supervillains. Or so they think. It turns out that Danielle and the other members of this supervillain group were brainwashed into believing that they were the children of classic Marvel villains. So while this Aftershock believed that she was Electro's daughter, in reality she wasn't. I find it almost poetic that a Spider-Man villain ends up being the bad guy here. There are a lot of parallels between Lunella and Peter Parker in this pilot, namely that they're both small-time heroes fighting for their communities. But in the broader story sense, Moongirl Landing also captures the spirit of New York that you see in the Spider-Man movies. The climax even has a "you mess with Moongirl, you mess with all of New York" kind of energy to it. This is absolutely one of my favorite beats in superhero movies, where the community comes to the aid of the small-time hero. Here, Lunella may be the catalyst for standing up against Aftershock, but without the neighbors uniting, the battle would have been lost. Can we also note how Mimi smiles with pride while Moongirl is fashioning her grounding device? I'm pretty sure she knows that Lunella is Moongirl in this instance, much like Aunt May pieced together that Peter was Spidey in several continuities. Lunella having a secret identity is also unique to the series. In the comics, her family openly knows that she's Moongirl. Another notable Easter egg in this episode includes a mural of Captain America outside of Lunella's home. While on the subject of street art, let's talk about some of the inspirations that went into bringing this vibrant version of New York City to life. According to the show's executive producer, Steve Lauder, he wanted to capture the art and imagination he saw growing up in New York City during the 80s and 90s. To do this, the art team used a lot of artistic benchmarks of NYC as an inspiration, most notably the work of graffiti artist Jean-Michel Basquiat and pop artist Andy Warhol. Lots of the groundwork for the city was also taken from Lauder's unfinished Cars spin-off, Metro. When Lunella is in search of a costume design for Moongirl, she tries on a costume that's possibly a reference to early Thor comic designs. She also tries on another costume that I can't fully place my finger on the inspiration for. The face guard makes her look a bit like 90s era X-Men though. If you think you know the inspiration here, let me know in the comments. Across the street from Roll With It in this episode is a toy store called Battle World. Battle World is another comic book Easter egg, and while it's currently something mostly only comic readers know about, there's a good chance we're gonna see Battle World coming to the MCU in the next few phases as they explore incursions. Basically, Battle World is the result of the Marvel multiverse collapsing in on itself and is a patchwork fusion of several different realities. During the Darkest Hour setback for this episode, Lunella White Fangs away Devil. This scene is drawn directly from issue 22, where Lunella takes Devil back in time to save Moon Boy and return Devil to his home. Lou goes solo for several issues afterwards before realizing that she needs her prehistoric pal. For non-Marvel Easter eggs, we have a classroom featuring children dressed like the protagonists of Naruto, and a techno wand shaped like Mickey Mouse. I also particularly enjoyed Lunella calling Aftershock Geek Lightning, a play on Greased Lightning, the car from Grease. Lunella's mother's old cassette player is also labeled Phony, a play on it being a phony parody version of the Sony Walkman. For the young ones watching, these were the devices we used to listen to music on before the iPod. When Moongirl and Dino first attempt to apprehend some bandits, Lunella fires one of her gloves that leaves a trail of the word woo. When the golden O's crash into the lamppost, they make a sound similar to when Sonic loses his golden rings in his video games. When Moongirl busts them the next day, she calls them Smurfy on account of them being covered in blue ink. Also, peep this trans as beautiful sticker on a background character's water bottle in science class. Nice to see more Disney TVA love and acceptance. This scene also name drops soccer star Megan Rapinoe and Yankees player Derek Jeter. Finally, if you pay attention to the sky in this episode, you'll notice that the story is marked by phases of the moon. At the start of the blackouts in the beginning of the ep, you'll notice a young moon, the first phase of the moon as it starts to wax. Later, the moon is seen as a waxing crescent when Moongirl and Devil Dino go on their first mission. After they go through a training montage, the moon is just a hair past being a quarter moon. Fittingly, we see this moon at the halfway point of the episode. Then, during the final shot of the episode, we pan up to see a full moon, representing the completion of Moongirl's origin story. Moving on to episode 2, the Borough Bully. This is the first episode where we get a proper intro credits number. According to supervising director Ben Giuano, this title sequence took inspiration from Cyndi Lauper's Girls Just Wanna Have Fun music video. We also get a glimpse of several villains from Moongirl's Rogues Gallery in this sequence, including Devos and Siphonator from this episode, Gravitas from episode 3, Aftershock from the pilot, and a flowery villain we've yet to see in these first 6 episodes. The Borough Bully opens up with Moongirl and Devil Dinosaur fighting Devos, a villain who first debuted in Fantastic Four issue number 359. Devos is an alien cyborg set on preventing war from consuming the universe by use of preventative violence. So he basically eliminates any species that could vaguely be a universal threat. Unlike Devos, the main villain of the episode, Siphonator, was created specifically for the show. Siphonator isn't wholly original though. He is a symbiote much like Carnage and Venom. In fact, while Moongirl is fighting him, she mentions that symbiotes have a weakness to sonic attacks. Funnily enough, the boy who Siphonator attaches to is voiced by Josh Keaton, someone who isn't a stranger to bonding with a symbiote. Keaton was also the voice of Peter Parker in The Spectacular Spider-Man and had his fair share of Venom episodes. This episode also gives us a look into Moongirl's social media. We know that she and Casey post battle footage, but we also see that she diversifies her content with some cooking videos. Casey's also a pretty sharp social media producer, seeing as their page has 82,000 subscribers and growing. Not long after MG's battle with Devos, the account jumps up to 87K. Within those subscribers is a user by the name 917 Queen, 917 being a reference to one of the area codes for New York City. On to episode 3, Run the Rink. This episode is notable for being the first episode of the series produced, and served as the original pilot for the series. According to the supervising director, Ben Juono, this episode was a testing ground for dialing into the show's unique style. From the pop-ups of comic book emojis, visual onomatopoeia, to the split-screen quick cuts, all the show's visual language was perfected within this episode. At the start of the episode, there's a quick scene where MG brings Devil to get a bath at a car wash. This scene was the first animation test of the series. Likewise, the musical number later in the episode was the show's first musical sequence, and was storyboarded to Childish Gambino's Sweatpants as a proof of concept. Not only did this storyboard get the show greenlit, but it was so good Disney let them keep Gambino in the show. Kind of wild considering that even the censored version has some content that slips under the radar if you know what you're listening for. According to Juono, he took heavy inspiration for these sequences from the works of Edgar Wright, particularly Scott Pilgrim vs. the World and Baby Driver. On his Twitter, Juono also talked about how he really wanted to lean into the art of locked shots, where the camera sits in a static place and the characters bring the frame to life by coming in and out of the shot, as opposed to relying on numerous angles and cuts. The villains in this episode, Instantany Girl, Man Baby, and Gravitas, are actually all original to the show, so no Marvel deep cuts this episode. I do particularly enjoy Instantany Girl's alter ego, ironically being Sophie Slugfoot. There is a reference to DC's Batman though. When Casey gets excited that Moongirl seemingly has her own rogues gallery already, she exclaims that this is year 2 kind of stuff. This is a reference to Frank Miller's Batman Year 1 run. Back in the late 80s when DC Comics were retconning and streamlining their comic book lore, Miller penned Batman Year 1, which defined Batman's first year of crime fighting for the newly rebooted DC canon. This origin arc was so popular that it soon became a staple series for DC characters, with several of them getting the Year 1 treatment. At the same time as the release of Batman Year 1, DC also released another Batman arc called Year 2, which followed Batman during his second year of crime fighting, where he had an established presence in Gotham. So here, Casey's superhero lingo is talking about Moongirl reaching the second phase of her crime fighting career quicker than expected. Next, we have episode 4, Check Yourself. This is another episode light on the comic book Easter eggs. The villain of this ep is another character made for the show, LOS 307. This non-binary supercomputer is played by non-binary actor Asia Kate Dillon. Asia is known for another role as a super genius, Taylor Mason on Showtime's Billions. Even in a show stacked with iconic animation, LOS 307's simplistic geometric display is a standout for me. We're also introduced to school principal Nelson, played by and modeled after Craig Robinson. During the chess game Lunella plays with LOS, we see some special advanced chess moves, such as when LOS castles their queen. This episode also features pieces to a school production of Singin' in the Rain, a classic 1950s musical rom-com about 3 actors attempting to transition from silent films to talking pictures. It's fitting for this episode, considering that LOS's AI represents the next evolution of technology for the modern era. In the narrative, Lunella is faced with technology that shakes up her world, providing her with a challenge to her title of the smartest entity at school. Set design and props for this play at IS 833 include the bookstore backdrop, tap shoes, and of course, umbrellas. When Lunella sneaks back into school to finish her match against LOS, she's greeted with the message, "Hello, Lunella." This is a reference to Hello World, which is the phrase that's commonly the first thing programmers learn to code when learning a programming language. In the art room that Lunella hides in, you can see the likeness of Mexican painter Frida Kahlo. During Moongirl's battle with LOS's techno monster, MG says that she's the Sika Henry of fighting techno monsters, and breaks the fourth wall to tell us to look it up. If you didn't follow MG's orders, Sika Henry is the first professionally ranked black female US triathlete in history, earning her Triathlon Pro card in 2021. This brings us to episode 5, Hair Today, Gone Tomorrow. This episode features guest star Jennifer Hudson as Lunella's jilted hair-turned-nemesis Maine, another original creation for this series. The plot of this episode seems to be inspired by an interaction with her mother in issue 15, where her mother insists that Lunella treat her hair better. Hair Today Gone Tomorrow is all about self-acceptance, but also touches more directly on society's anti-Black attitudes towards Black hairstyles. This episode is a great example of how Moongirl and Devil Dino aims to put authenticity at the heart of its show. According to Lauder, the writer's room for this series is entirely female and culturally diverse, which allows them to draw from true-to-life experiences for episodes just like this. On Twitter, this episode's director, Christine Liu, keyed us into some specific details to look out for in the episode. For example, you'll notice that this episode is bookended by Lunella knocking her hair products onto the floor and ends with her picking them back up, symbolizing her journey of learning how to care for her hair. At school, Lunella is struck through the heart by the words of a girl that Casey dubs clueless. Not only is that a comment on this girl's ignorant words, it also doubles as a reference to 1995's Clueless, a rom-com about an extremely privileged white girl who slowly learns to put others before herself throughout the film. Later on in this episode, after Lunella loses her hair, she puts on a purple and green jester hat. This is possibly a reference to Marvel's Joker parallel the Jester, a New York-based street-level villain. After Devil gets tripped up chasing Rockin' Rudy, another original villain for the series, you'll notice a graffiti stencil in the background that looks to be inspired by the Obey Giant. The Obey street art campaign was created by artist Shepard Fairey and modeled after wrestling legend Andre the Giant. While prepping Devil to hunt down Maine, Lou tells him that they're gonna search every warehouse, farmhouse, henhouse, outhouse, and doghouse in the city until she finds Maine. This line is borrowed directly from 1993's The Fugitive. According to Christine Liu, this episode's mixtape scene drew inspiration from Chuck Jones's 1965 award-winning animated short, The Dot and the Line. Liu also mentioned that the mirror scene from Enter the Dragon played a big inspiration in this battle as well. The song that follows the mixtape battle, My Hair is a Mood, was originally planned for the mixtape battle itself, but after finding that its message clashed with the emotions in that moment, they decided to move it to the Sailor Moon-inspired magical girl transformation sequence when Lou and Maine reunite. Finally, we have episode 6, The Beyonder. Starting off this entry, we have the cold open villain Stiletto. This character is another brand new addition to the Marvel Universe made specifically for this show, but she's more or less a rebranding of Lady Stiltman. Not much about this villain's history has been revealed, but she uses the same tech as the Daredevil villain Stiltman. Introduced in Spider-Man number 611, Callie Ryan, aka Lady Stiltman, is a klutzy joke of a villain and serves mostly as an easy layup goon, much like Moongirl's Rogues Gallery from Run the Rink. In the comics, the name Stiletto is an alias for a few unrelated assassins, who are themed around stiletto knives, not heels. While Moongirl is staking out in wait for Stiletto, she does a scan of a billboard for Cosmic Cola. Not only is this advert a bit of foreshadowing for the cosmic level being Moongirl meets in this episode, but it also shares a name with a soft drink from the Jetsons. This is probably just a coincidence though, as the drinks look completely different. When Moongirl starts picking up radio interference from the Beyonder, it's depicted as fizzling circles. This is the Kirby crackle. These dots are part of legendary comic book illustrator Jack Kirby's signature style and are used to convey cosmic energy. As mentioned earlier, Kirby was the creator of Devil Dinosaur, but he's also the creator of countless Marvel icons. While he himself didn't create the Beyonder, he was the creator for numerous cosmic and sci-fi Marvel characters, including the Fantastic Four and Molecule Man, both of which are integral to the Beyonder's backstory. Because Kirby was so influential to the creation of the Beyonder, we can see that the Beyonder's powers are illustrated with the Kirby crackle. Beyonder himself is a creation by writer Jim Shooter and artist Michael Zeck, and first appeared in 1984's Marvel Superhero Secret Wars issue 1 as a disembodied cosmic force. Considered to be one of the strongest characters in Marvel canon, the Beyonder is essentially a god with reality-warping powers. Born outside of our universe where he was the sole entity, the Beyonder developed a fascination with humanity once he discovered Earth. Much like we see in this episode, the Beyonder is often a whim away from erasing reality, but his curiosity about the human condition keeps him from pulling the plug. I mentioned Battleworld earlier, and in the comics, the Beyonder is the creator of the first Battleworld. So, the inclusion of a Battleworld toy shop across from Roll With It may have been foreshadowing that the Beyonder has been watching Lunella closely the whole time. This episode does reveal that the Beyonder has been narrating every episode since the Borough Bully, so perhaps the inclusion of Battleworld and Moongirl Landing is how the Beyonder's presence was included in every episode without weighing down the pacing for the pilot. This show's version of the Beyonder is iconic. Not only does executive producer Lawrence Fishburne bring his unmatched acting talent to this role, but this portrayal gives the Beyonder a powerful gender-fluid presence dripping with charisma. Usually, the Beyonder is portrayed as less wacky and more snobbish, but the choice to have Fishburne play this godlike being like the Powerpuff Girls him or a Tim Curry character truly elevates the source material. He's constantly bending the laws of physics and the show's artistic medium without any thought, so giving him a fun blasé attitude is perfect for exhibiting just how little he cares about mortal things. What's the end of the world for us is no more than a little joke to him. During his introductory song and dance, he mentions that he's from beyond time and space. This is a reference to his home dimension, the Beyond Realm. He also makes a quick visual reference to Aang's little airbending trick from Avatar: The Last Airbender. He does also drop hints that he isn't the sole Beyonder. In the comics, he was eventually retconned to be part of a race of being called the Beyonders. He himself is actually one of the youngest Beyonders and is considered a child, which explains how this version of the Beyonder is tasked with watching Earth against his own wishes. Basically, for you DTVA fans, think of him as a more mature version of the Owl House's Collector. Later on in his dance number, he displays a few things from Earth he does not understand. In addition to things like holidays, Tamagotchis, food, and sports, he doesn't really get bathrooms. In the comics, Spider-Man actually has to teach the Beyonder how to use the bathroom when he takes human form. We see the Beyonder take a few human forms in this episode, like this hip child who wears a clock around their neck like rapper Flava Flav. Here, the Beyonder wears the clock as a visual reminder that Lunella's time to save the universe is ticking down. The Beyonder also takes the form of a female librarian, giving us a look at the Beyonder's gender fluidity. In the comics, while the Beyonder defaults to he/him pronouns and presents as male, their physical body is nothing more than an avatar so that humans can perceive a fraction of their essence. They are beyond gender and have taken female form as well. In the 90s and early aughts, the Beyonder chose to present as female, going by Cosmos with a K, and later the Maker while in this form. While attempting to stop all the chaos that the Beyonder causes in this episode, Moongirl and Devil have to save some folks trapped in a burning building. They roll down Devil's back, much like how Devil saves Lunella's class from a fire in Moongirl and Devil Dinosaur issue 3. In the next scene, when the Beyonder is hanging out with Devil Dino and watching movies, there's a dig at corporate Disney for doing live-action reboots of animated classics. The B-story conflict of this episode comes from Lunella dismissing the group project contributions of her classmate Eduardo. Her motivation for doing so is that she can go to the Manhattan Wakandan Outreach Center. If you recall, at the end of the first Black Panther film, T'Challa in the MCU starts the first Wakandan Outreach Center in Oakland, and in Wakanda Forever, we get to look inside another outreach center in Mali, when French forces attempt to steal vibranium and get their butts whooped by the Dora Milaje. When Lou is daydreaming about going to the Manhattan Center, the silhouettes of Shuri and the Black Panther are shown. Eduardo is one of the few characters in this show that's adapted directly from the Moongirl comics. Like the version we see in the show, comic Eduardo is a bit of a nuisance to Lunella and constantly acts childish. This episode in particular, however, does expand on Eduardo's characterization and makes him much more sympathetic. In the comics, there's a similar story with a Lego building competition, only in this version, Eduardo actually wants Lunella to do all the work, but their teacher forbids it. I think having Eduardo actually excited to participate is a nice change of pace. To be fair to Lunella's original plan, however, creating a device to convert CO2 into oxygen and renewable energy is one key to combat global warming, and to provide sufficient resources for space travel. She's literally making Nobel Prize-winning tech here. Of the other science fair projects, we see some hefty competition, including a comparison between potato and lemon batteries, a report on mold, another on New York's wastewater, a self-charging generator, a study on the effects of slam poetry on photosynthesis, and a display on giving air particles electrical charges. The winner of the fair, however, were the students that used a pair of magnets to achieve levitation. You can see on their display board that they used research on maglev trains, real trains that use magnets instead of wheels to achieve high speeds. After Lunella and Eduardo lose the science fair, the Beyonder starts teasing Lou with the destruction of the planet. He pulls out sheet music labeled Beyonder Symphony No. 616 in B minor. 616 is obviously a reference to Earth 616, the mainstream Marvel universe. Being a minor key, B minor is actually one of the sadder keys for music, but notably not the saddest. German composer Christian Schubart wrote that B minor is key for expressing the quiet acceptance of fate. But other music theorists, such as Ernest Power, have noticed that it's also used to convey melancholic but hopeful feelings. Considering that the destruction of the world is both impending, then narrowly avoided here, B minor is perfect for this scene. During the mixtape scene, the Beyonder uses his powers to deconstruct reality. In one of my favorite easy-to-miss frames, he himself becomes a pixelized version. Also, how freaking adorable is this chibi devil dinosaur? Dang, Beyonder is flashing his Marvel Snap variants here. In the aftermath of the Beyonder sparing the planet, we get an interesting explanation of events. It seems that instead of acknowledging a fight breaking out between Moongirl and the Beyonder, Principal Nelson attributes the bizarre levitating of the school to the Magnet Team's science fair project. This makes me wonder if the Beyonder erased his presence from the minds of everyone but Lunella, Devil, and Casey, or if he was simply only visible to them in the first place. These are all the details and source material changes I caught while watching the first batch of Moongirl episodes, but I want to know if I missed anything in the comments. If this video does well, I'll try to find some time to break down the rest of the series, so be sure to share this video with the Moongirl fans in your life. Overall, I'm personally loving this updated take on MG, and I can't wait to see how this series unfolds. You've been watching WhitneyVision. Peace!